Boker Tov. Good morning, everybody. I was thinking this morning about the end of Parshat Noah, which is where we're going to find ourselves this week. The beginning, you know, Noah and the flood. The end, we hear about the Tower of Babel. And it's this very strange narrative. Why do the people want to build a tower? And what's so wrong about building a tower? And why do they get punished? There's an interesting midrash about this, or rabbinic parable, that says that the enterprise was no less than a rebellion against God. And there were three kinds of rebels. Some people wanted to go to heavens to wage war with God. Others wanted to go up to worship idols. Others wanted to fight God and God's angels with spears. Doesn't sound like a good idea, any of it. But these were people that seemed to be very intent on making great names for themselves. They were filled with arrogance. They didn't care about other people at all. And this, of course, is precisely the problem. The Midrash continues, many years were passed in building the tower. It reached such a great height that it took a year to get to the top. A brick was more precious in the sight of the builders than a human being. If a person fell down and died, nobody paid any attention as they were building. But if a brick dropped, everybody freaked out because it was going to take a year to replace that brick. They were so intent on finishing the tower that when there was a woman in labor, they made her give birth right there and keep building. No going off the tower to take care of yourself or your new child. These people, in short, were so obsessed with building a tower, with making a great name for themselves, filled with arrogance and a sense of self-import, that they didn't even notice one another when somebody was hurt. They didn't notice, or didn't care, I should say, when there was a woman in labor, to use an extreme example. And God sees this, and the Torah says God punishes them. And what does the Midrash say? Why are they punished? So they can't understand one another's speech, right? So that they begin to babble, the Tower of Babel, right? Thus it happened that when one person would ask for a mortar and another handed him a brick, in a rage they would throw the brick at the partner and kill him. Many perished in this manner, and the rest were punished according to the nature of their rebellious conduct. In other words, God said, okay, you're so arrogant, you don't care about one another, all you care about is a big building project. You can't hear one another, you can't speak to one another. I'll show you what happens when you can't speak to one another, when you can't hear one another. What happens? Chaos, death, and destruction. Nothing good. So what does this fanciful tale come to teach us? Perhaps that we should be very wary about where we focus our energies. And we should remember that one of the most important places to focus our energies, attention, our love, and care is not in the structures that we build, the material things that we have, the wealth that we, gather up, all of which is certainly fine to have. But when it becomes an obsession, when we become so focused on the material that we forget the spiritual, when we become so focused on building things that are important, we forget about building relationships that are important and connecting with people and listening to people and hearing one another and learning to speak the same language again. This is, when we fail to do that, this causes nothing but pain and destruction. So my hope for us as we begin a new year and we start back at the Torah again is that we all take this lesson to heart, remembering the importance of always listening to one another, trying to hear one another, and remembering where we place our focus. Do we place our focus too much on the material, on things? Because if we do, then we risk everything that is important falling apart. May that not be the case, and may we work to build sacred and holy relationships with each other, with members of our community, with strangers, with people we agree with, and with people we don't agree with, remembering that all of us are sacred and all of us are made in God's image, and we don't need to build a tower to connect with God. We just need to build our relationships with one another. Have a wonderful week.